KC is pretty much dead after they removed Skulltown. Not enough POI and bad loot. I used to like KC a lot, but now I don't even think it's worth putting in rotation. Agreed, the loot sucks and KC is just rage-inducing. There's this weird mechanic going on behind the scenes in Apex Legends regarding the loot pool. Let me explain. I have 20k kills with my Wraith and KD at 3.5. Whenever I drop, I find absolutely garbage weapons like 3 Mosems and 2 20-20-20s. White knockdown shield, no body shield. But my low-level teammates found instantly purple shields and R301 or Bolt, or any other good gun they find, a good loot, but for me it's all garbage. Nonetheless, when I choose a legend other than Wraith that I have a low state on them, like 100 kills or so, I find good loot at the drops, and it happened a lot. Today I was playing Wraith, and in 6 games in a row I didn't find any good gun or good loot, or even a body shield. In the 7th game, I decided to choose Watson with a low state, and guess what? Purple at the drop and Volt with 120 ammo. And yes, 6 kills at the drop. I've been saying this for a while, actually. I agree with all you have said, bro. You spoke my mind, though. Thank you. So this is just a small sample of the complaints and conspiracy theories that you'll find when browsing Reddit about the loot distribution tables in Apex Legends. So what's going on here? Is there any credence to any of these claims? In this video, I'm going to dig into the nature of random numbers and how the human brain can be easily tricked into seeing patterns that don't really exist. I'll also explain why, just as slot machines are not rigged in the same way that people think they are, Respawn doesn't need to rig the game when it comes to Apex Legends either. Random numbers and good quality math will take care of all this for them. Before I get started on this video, don't forget to press the like button and hit subscribe if you'd like to be notified when I create new videos. Also, if you'd like to come by and chat about this video or any other gaming related topics, I stream every evening from around 7 or 8 PM. Link in the description below. Let's first address the issue of whether Respawn manipulates the loot tables based on the skill of the player. Before the start of Season 5, when players were discussing Loba's Black Market Boutique ability, one of the devs posted this response. The loot has always been selected at the start of a match. We've never had Schrodinger's loot, and that's not changing in Season 5 as far as I know. On the technical side, the loot model spawns on demand for optimization reasons. When a Loba is nearby, the loot she can see using her passive spawns. When the bin is opened or Loba's staff is placed nearby, all of the loot spawns. But the actual selection of what loot will spawn occurs during the character select screen. So what's going on here, and why do players feel the RNG is changing based on their skill? In my day job, I work with gambling math for slot machines and other gambling games, and there's a number of phenomena that occur here that apply. The first is that people will generally remember notable events such as a big win on a slot machine. If you ask most hardcore gamblers if they've had a good weekend, they'll often tell you something like, oh yeah, I won $1,000, when in fact they spent over $2,000 during the course of the weekend, but had a one-off win for $1,000. All the losses don't really register in their memory. Similarly, when we drop in Apex and get crushed off the drop, we remember that there were no guns, and even more so if the enemy got purple shields and we didn't. Also, if your teammate gets a purple shield and you don't find a shield or a gun at all, then that will stand out much more strongly. In addition, in the first example I gave from Reddit, the sample size of 6 games is nowhere near enough to see any patterns. To demonstrate this, I'll tell you a story about a professor who asked his class to go home and toss a coin 200 times and record the results, or alternatively, if they wanted, they could just write down 200 results randomly. When the students returned, he was able to tell with 100% accuracy who had actually tossed the coins and who didn't. On the screen here, I'm showing you one list of heads and tails that was randomly generated and one that I made up by typing the values randomly. Can you tell which is which? I'll give you a moment to take a look. If you decided the top one is the random one, then you're incorrect. It turns out that for a random distribution like this, there is a greater than 96% probability that there will be at least one instance of 6 heads or tails in a row. In this case, you can see that in the randomly generated set at the bottom, there are 2 instances of 6 heads in a row and 4 instances of 6 or more tails in a row, with one of them actually 8 in a row. It turns out that the odds of 8 is only about 54%. So you only have to run this experiment 2 times, and it's highly likely that you'll get 8 or more of the same side in a row. It turns out that our brains really struggle to intuitively estimate the probabilities of all but the most simple random events. As humans, we are very good at seeing patterns, but very bad at recognizing randomness. We can see the flip side of this play out with the rarity of heirloom packs in Apex Legends. In Apex, Respawn will give you an heirloom guaranteed if you open 500 packs, if you don't get that heirloom by the time you reach 500. It is generally held belief that heirlooms are much rarer than 1 in 500, since so many players don't get an heirloom until they reach their 500th pack. If we do the math though, it turns out that if we assume the odds are 1 in 500, then 50% of players will not get an heirloom before they open 346 loot boxes, close to 2/3 of 500, and over 1/3 of players will not get an heirloom by the time they get to 500 packs opened. It's certainly possible that the odds are in fact lower than 1 in 500, but I suspect they are not far off this, as the anecdotal evidence I see suggests something like the distributions that I see in the math presented here. So the other complaint that we see is that the loot distribution on Kings Canyon, or in the game in general, sucks. As I've explained above, this may not be as bad as most players perceive, and this is exacerbated by confirmation bias. If you have a negative expectation, you'll remember those negative events better than if you have a positive expectation. However, there's also probably something else going on here, as I do think some players have an inordinately unlucky experience. I believe this has a lot to do with dropping in the same place repeatedly and expecting a different result over time. Most games with loot drops, and all the evidence shows that Apex is no different, define a bunch of spawn nodes and then assign a loot table to each node. These loot tables are a random distribution of items that can appear at that location. In the case of Apex, most nodes that spawn guns will also spawn ammo beside the gun as part of that single node in the loot table. There seems little doubt that different locations have different sets of spawns, and there's often a wide variety of loot tables that are not the same as each other. For example, there are often spots that have a high probability of spawning a purple or gold armor, and a smaller chance of spawning some other kind of armor piece. Other locations seem to either always spawn a weapon or nothing at all. I should point out at this point that a spawner can have a small probability of spawning nothing at all. This keeps each spawn location from always looking the same. So with this information, it becomes important to observe your drops over a period of time and learn the best paths to take for a given location. Also, some drop locations or buildings are just going to have better volume of quality spawn points than others. As an example, I recorded 9 drops in a row at the exact same location and counted the weapons I received. This location is one of my favourite places, as it almost guarantees if 2 of us land at either ends of this building, we will both come out with reasonable weapons to start with. We also have follow-up buildings to move on to if we are not under fire. So as you can see from the tally over 9 runs, we picked up 32 guns just on my side of the building, and we didn't get to see a few of the drops since my teammate or an enemy got there first. Of all of those drops, we never had a drop where the only weapon available was a Mozambique or a 2020. I pretty much always came out with 2 decent starting guns, and often the guns I stuck with for the entire game. So in closing, if you think the RNG or the devs are out to get you, don't just keep hammering your head against the same wall and expect a different result. Switch your drop locations or the path you run. Also, watch out for updates, as this will often cause loot tables to change, which may make your old favourite not so good anymore. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and if you have, please hit the like button and subscribe to help me hit that 100 subs. I'd also love to see you on Twitch, where I stream every day from around 7 to 8 PM Pacific under the username of Duncanus. Until next time, happy gaming.
Enemy over there. I wonder what they found.
Just giving my shields a recharge.
Great, already inside the ring. Enemy taken down.
Enemy down.
I am repairing myself.
Phoenixing.
Just right in position.
Recharging shield.
We're on our own now.
Enemy down.
I looted our teammate's banner. Target down.
One.
Game, guys. Yay. Thanks, Fail. Nice way to finish, huh? With glasses on, too.